Hey, somebody needs to sign the diplomas. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by WisdomHarbor.com. Here are a couple of quick questions. First question, how long has the public school system in your state been repeating the mantra, more money for education? And the second question, through the years, as they've gotten more money, how much has changed? Today, schools all over America are finding WisdomHarbor.com's one-of-a-kind web portal to be the perfect, low-cost, high-quality educational tool for their students. For less than $3 a month per teacher, classrooms have access to original content only found on WisdomHarbor.com that teaches, entertains, and builds character in young people. Utilizing video, audio, and the written word, content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. Check it out today and join your friends and neighbors who are already a part of WisdomHarbor.com. And isn't it time your school system got involved? Observations and answers, that's what we do here on the Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. I have something very exciting today. In fact, so exciting that I already know we're going to do this again and maybe again. I have a guest today that has such incredible information that is if you look at the center of the way everybody thinks, there is a normal way everybody thinks, and then there is a best. And I love thinking that I haven't heard before, that is logical, that makes sense. And that's what we have today with Jonathan Brush. Jonathan is the president and CEO of Unbound. It's a project-based higher education company. And Unbound prepares high school students for the real world and offers a complete alternative to traditional college. And Jonathan speaks at events and conferences around the country about family, young adults. You hear what I'm saying? And education. Please welcome Jonathan Brush. Hey, Jonathan.
It is a delight and an honor to be here, Andy. I'm super excited to be talking to you and really excited to get a chance to share some of the stuff that I've been blessed to hear about and learn about. So,
man, when you and I, we have been face to face a couple of times recently, and I was just fascinated hearing about what you do, fascinated and excited. And I got to meet some of the staff. I got to meet some of the young people with Unbound. And if you don't mind, give our listeners and viewers just an overview of Unbound.
Yeah, so Unbound is, we call it a higher education project-based higher education system. And what I mean by that is that if you've ever talked to somebody who went to school, went to college, and you said, well, do you remember anything from your classes? And they say, no. And you say, did you ever use your major? And they say, not really. And you say, well, did you get a good, was it college education worth it? And they'll say, well, yeah. And you'll say, why? And then when you ask and you dig a little deeper and you ask a couple of questions, it was all of the kind of extracurricular activities. It was the leadership skills they learned. It was social interactions they had. Sometimes it was the network they formed. And so with Unbound, we've had this unique opportunity. We said, what if we focused on that? What if we took those things and we made sure they were front and center, and we made that kind of the part that we really concentrated on? Not that academics aren't important, but what if we really focused on those skills that were the transferable ones that we know will make a difference for people in the rest of their lives, and make that the center point of the whole program? And the result has been this really fun journey with Unbound and an extraordinary group of students who we've been able to equip with some unique skills that have made them. We say that we want to make you better for everyday life, like a Navy SEAL is better for military life. You know, that kind of equivalency in terms of preparation and training. And it has just been one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do in my life. It's been really fun, and it's been just an amazing journey.
Now, and you don't neglect the academics. That, I mean,
Correct.
because that's there, but there is more of a focus on life skills, if I could put it that way.
Yeah, and there's lots of people that say that they're focusing on life skills, and then it turns out to be a class with a test and a bubble chart and all these kinds of things, and
Right.
and that's fine. I mean, I'm not necessarily belittling those things, but life skills tend to happen in life, and they tend to happen better if they happen in life with a mentor looking over your shoulder saying that, but maybe this, or go ahead, try it. That didn't work out so good, did it? Maybe here's a better idea. And if you start to get serious about systematizing those things and trying to find like, hey, what works? What happened here that made sense, and do that again and again, things get pretty exciting.
I was fascinated by, I've seen obviously traditional schools and I've seen online schools, but you are a combination. I mean, a
Yeah.
very definite combination with the in-person stuff, a lot more dynamic than anything I've ever experienced.
Yeah, and so Andy, you and I might have some commonality there. I love technology and the fact that I'm sitting in Virginia and you're down in Orange Beach and we're able to do this. I mean, how cool is that, right? And I love the fact that I get to listen to the professional noticer on my phone as I'm driving and doing all these things. And yet at the same time, I recognize that technology destroys some really important human interaction. And so there's a mix there. I have a phrase called be deliberate or live deliberately. And that is that you want to sort of think about this. And so, for example, whenever I have to replace my phone, I delete every app off of it that I can possibly do. I scrub that sucker. And then I just add them back as I need them. And I try to remember that the phone works for me. I don't work for the phone. And so the same thing happens here with technology. We say, look, technology gives us some extraordinary advantages. I mean, there's in terms of the access to information and the access to teachers and the way that we can, lower costs for students. I mean, I don't believe in going into debt for higher education, which I know is a radical idea. The internet can offer some really crazy ideas, crazy opportunities that way. But at the end of the day, I don't believe you can be educated without a live interaction, interpersonal type of event.
Educated.
Educated. That's right.
Educated.
I don't think
You can get a degree without it,
That's right.
but you can't be educated.
You can't really be equipped to do the things that you need to do. And honestly, as people flow more and more into digital stuff and the metaverse, I actually tend to be one of those sort of contrarians that say, I bet you that means that if you actually know how to deal with somebody in person, you're going to have so many amazing opportunities. And so, yes, Unbound is a hybrid where we'll deliver some courses and some academics to you online, but there is no substitute for in-person interactions. And so we create some really intense, deliberately engineered in-person interactions that are essential in order to be able to graduate from the program.
Now this year, I saw the was it 3 or 4 out of town areas that you guys went to?
That's great.
Which one of which was here?
That's right.
I'm like, here? But where did you guys go this year, and what happens?
Yeah, so we start every year. For us, that starts in the school year, so it tends to be in late August with our national conference that we hold in Michigan. So we go to Lake City, Michigan. We have a lot of alumni come back for that, and we do a new student orientation and a graduation program, all kind of wrapped up in a week-long event with speakers and all those kinds of things. And it's a really fun. Over the years, it's become a bit of a family reunion. In fact, I now have alumni coming back, bringing their children. And so we have this kind of really neat interaction where I have young students coming in for the first time, meeting alumni who have graduated and have their kids, little kids at this point there. And they're all kind of interacting and connecting with one another. Then we go forward and we typically go to, we've been to Alabama now 2 years in a row, or someplace south where it's warm. And we do what we call our base camp, which is an intensive focused on practical skills, typically time management, task management. And we say time and task only make sense in the context of relationships. So a lot of relationship skills, which we think can be a learned and taught skill.
Yeah.
And then we go to Colorado in the spring for something we call Capstone, which is a leadership intensive. So base camp is more if Apex, which is our national conference, is kind of a family reunion fun time, base camp is real intense practically, and Capstone is real intense academically as we finish out a series of 3 leadership courses that we've taught for college credit. and that takes place in Colorado at the end there. And then in between, we often do some regional events. We have frequently sent some international trips of various kinds. And so there's typically a fourth option that students take with that. But Andy, the concentration here is that I want you to be embedded in your local community. So the program is designed so you must interact with your local community in order to be successful. So wherever you are. And then I want to connect you to an extraordinary network of young people and alumni all across the country who I will literally promise in writing will give you dividends for the rest of your life. And I tell people, think service academy level networks. Like if you graduate from Annapolis, you can go anywhere in the world and people say, oh, I'm a Navy grad, and they'll give you the year and they'll open their portfolio for you. And I have a situation where if you say I'm Unbound, literally you can travel across the country and only stay with Unbound students, or you can break down in the middle of Montana and call somebody that you've never met and they'll come and pick you up, which is a true story. Right. And so that's the kind of network that we want to create for our students.
So just so I can quit thinking about this, where are some of the international places you've taken people?
Yeah, so we've gone to Ecuador several times. We went to Zimbabwe here recently. We work with an organization that does missions trips, but they do those in places where they return again and again, so they build a relationship with the folks there. We have in the past gone to Spain for an advanced study abroad program that we've run as we have had students have interest, which is a much more residential situation where they've lived in Spain for a number of weeks. And so that part of it ebbs and flows depending on who's interested and what opportunities. And of course, it kind of ebbed over the last couple of years as international travel became really difficult. And I hope the flow starts a little bit more here recently. But those are really some fantastic trips and some places we've been able to go across the world with Unbound students. So
I was amazed seeing your staff. You had, I think it was 18 staff members that were here, and I was amazed meeting the young people. And how I don't know. It seems like it shouldn't be so unique to me to be in a room full of young people that are that sharp and that together. I guess I haven't seen it a lot lately, and it was awesome.
Andy, one of the things that I've done this now for many, many years, we've done these live events, and almost without exception, speakers have come to me afterwards and they said, I need to know, what did you threaten your students with? And I said, what? And they said, what secret sauce did you use? I just did a presentation to an entire auditorium full of your students, and I didn't see one blue light. In other words, not a single person was on their phone. What did you do? Did you take their phones? And the first time I was asked that, I just was completely dumbfounded by it. And I said, I've never even thought about making an announcement about phones. I've never once even considered telling my students how they should use technology or all those kinds of things. And yet that's true. If you're in the room with our students and you're speaking to them, you will see a lot of pens and papers moving. You will see a lot of people paying attention. And one of the speakers, Andy, that was at the event you were just at recently, told me afterwards, he said, I never realized what a gift attention was. And I've been a speaker for 20 plus years. And he said, and I've never been so gifted as I was in front of your students. And I say that just because I'm so proud of them and so excited about them. And I have to tell you, I can't take specific credit for that. We have students who come to the program who are just some of the most hungry to learn people I've ever met. And they do again and again. And it's never an announcement we've made that they are eager to learn. And it is amazing to be in front of them as an audience.
Well, it's true. And as a speaker, it just seems odd to me talking to you about that. It seems odd to me that through the years, I have had to develop techniques to deal with people who are falling asleep or people who are reading a newspaper while I'm talking. Or, I mean, the companies are bringing me in and paying money so that this person, and I mean, I've had a guy sitting there reading a newspaper, and so, but I wander around a lot, and so a lot of times I'll walk over to somebody who's falling asleep and I just put my hand on their shoulder and just keep talking, or I'll talk to them. But man, with your audience, it was like, it was like 100%. And so
I have
You
to
know,
tell you, as
these,
somebody who speaks in different places, it's a terrible thing because I get so used to them, and then I'll go to another audience, and I'll be like, "Where is everybody? Wake up, pay attention!"
isn't that
And
crazy?
it is really a gift to be in front of them. Yeah. So
You know, I have said for a long time that, and the reason, you know, when I was introducing you, the reason I said that you talk about family, young adults, young adults, young adults, and education is because young adults are critical to me. And this is where I believe that our country, our society, our culture is losing it. Um, you know, I've talked to parents for a long time, and I, and when they express challenges to me, I'll ask a lot of times. I'll say, "Well, what is your parenting strategy? What do you consider your style?" And over again, I've heard, "Well, we're just trying to raise great kids. You know, we just want to raise great kids. We've told, you know, we told God, if you'll give us kids, they'll be our priority. And we think about our kids. We just want to raise great kids." And I want to say, well, there's your problem, you know, because you don't really want to raise great kids. You want to raise kids who become great adults. That's two different things, two different pathways. You can make them be great kids because we're bigger than they are and we have all the money. But you're into creating something that when they're away from you, and I love the fact that for the parents who have, you are able to continue that progression for that family.
you know, and there were two things that really struck me, and they happened kind of at similar times in my life. I'm a huge fan of history and love to study history, and I came from a family that was really serious about that. And I really had an intriguing interest in Napoleonic naval history and warfare and all those kinds of things. And so, both from a historical perspective, read books from that period, as well as historical fiction like Patrick O'Brien and all those kinds of things, and particularly the British Navy. And here's something that just really jumped out at me. You know, the British Navy would bring in midshipmen, which are officers, right? So that means that they're in charge of divisions. And the average age of a midshipman entering the British Navy would be 12. Now, a 12-year-old was expected to manage men, full-grown men in combat, to run a section of the guns on their frigates and ships of war, and that when the British Navy would capture a ship, a midshipman would sometimes be in charge of a crew of men who would then have to take that ship and navigate perhaps halfway around the world and take that ship back to port. And that was considered to be standard. It was not exceptional. It was the same in the French Navy. It was the same in the Spanish Navy. It was the same in the American Navy. In other words, there was a time when we thought 12-year-old young men were capable of being men and being leaders. Now, I'm not advocating that we put 12-year-olds in war positions. that's not right. The point here. But at the same time, I met an extraordinary young man when I was working at a college. And then I found I had two brothers, and they were also extraordinary. And I thought, well, I clearly have to meet this young man's father. So I went back into literally the hills of West Virginia. I met this guy, and I'm sitting on his front porch, and I asked him what he did. He said, well, I made all these mistakes. I said, great. I want to make the same mistakes. Tell me what they are. And he said something that I didn't expect. He said, Jonathan, I never considered them to be mine. I always thought I had them for a little while, and my job was to prepare them to launch, and then God would bring them back or else, depending. But my job was to launch them. And Andy, I really had to sit back because at that point in my parenting life, and my oldest was about 12 at the time, I was really kind of in the hold tight. And that completely shifted my paradigm. And I thought, no, my job is not to hold tight and protect, although there's an element of that in parenting. My job from this point forward is to prepare these children to launch. And that just has been when you think about that and then juxtapose it with historical expectations for young people, I've never had a teenager in my house, Andy. I have children and I have young adults. Those are the only two kinds of people that we have in our program and that we have in my household and that I'm interested in dealing with. I think teenager is just an excuse to be stupid. And I don't believe that you have that luxury anytime in life. So,
Benjamin Franklin was working as an interpreter for his dad, knew 4 languages when he was like 14. And I think there's something, I think that we have missed it when we want our children to have it easier than we did. I think we've missed it. I think that we've missed it when we say, well, I want them to have a childhood. And so to people who say that, that means I want them to live years without any responsibility. And
what a terrible thing to do to a kid. I mean, like,
it is.
You steal so much from them. There's something extraordinary. And Andy, I don't really quite, someday I feel like I want to write a book about this, but I don't understand it well enough to do so. There's something almost magical about the power of expectations. And you witnessed my group at the place we were. So just to put this in context, folks, we rented a very large beach house in Gulf Shores, Alabama. We have all the students there. And then Andy came and spoke to us. And then Andy invited us of our staff to come visit him. Now, I just want you to understand this. I have a house full of young adults. Okay. So from 16 to 25-ish. And I took my entire staff and we left for 3 hours. And I never even thought twice about that. And I didn't give any special instructions. I didn't tell anybody to do anything. I have some internal leadership structures for our students. But I left and I came back and we took a little longer than we expected. And when I came back, they had noticed that we were gone and they'd already prepared dinner themselves, which is typically something we do. They had set the tables and they had continued on with everything going on. And there's a power of expectation where I say, I expect you to act like adults. And we start every session. I normally come up with 3 rules that are contextualized to the place where we are. And then that's all to get to rule 4. And there's a story behind that. And I say, rule 4 is always act like an adult and don't be stupid. And if you have any questions about what's stupid and what's not, come and talk to us and we'll help you figure it out. And I will tell you that I do multiple events across the country every year. And I have never had a significant rules violation. I've never had a place where I've had a crisis of any kind. I have normal 16 to 25-year-olds at my events, and I have never had anybody cause a disciplinary action that's required me to do anything. And it starts with us saying, we expect you to act like adults, do so. And we've never been disappointed. And I don't claim to take full credit for that, but I just tell you there's something magical about having high expectations and then watching people want to meet that bar. So,
yeah, man. So when these young adults join you, they're joining you in a quest. They're in a quest for something. You're in a quest for something for them. What is that?
Yeah. So I pitch to our students and say, I want you to think about doing things differently. If you get to us, we have a program that if I walk into a room and there's 20 young adults, 18 of them might go like, what? And walk away. And then 2 of them will say, since I heard about that, I can never do anything else. And I'm unapologetic about that. Like I'm not at all, because in fact, I kind of deliberately designed the program to be that way. We attract people that want to do things differently. And those people want to make a difference in the world. But here's the twist, Andy. That's a very normal young adult thing to say, right?
Yeah. Everybody wants to make a difference in the world, but nobody wants to be different.
That's exactly right. I have students who want to be different and who are willing to be practical about what it takes to get there. And that means that we don't expect people to start multi-billion-dollar companies by the time they're 25. In fact, we think that might get you a good company, but it'll get you a terrible person. that there is a progression, there's a story, there's a chapters to life, and that we want people willing to do that.
Stop. I want you to back up before I forget this. Well, I realize I could watch this and write this down. But what did you say about practical a minute ago? How did you say that?
Practical. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. You talking about at the very beginning in terms of a practical application, or you're wanting to. Shoot, it just struck me, and I'm so busy listening to you, it went out of my head. But I almost want to say, Matt, re-roll that. But it's something about a practical application to. Oh, I know what it was. I said that I'm not interested in young adults who want to just make a difference in the world, and they expect that magically happens. That they aspire to be different. All right, and I'm going to get on a slight soapbox here. I get really frustrated, and particularly I operate in a lot of Christian circles, right? And I it's not hard to get a speaker, usually a young pastor who doesn't know anything about the world, gets up and says, we should change the world. You're the leaders of today. You're not the leaders of tomorrow. You're the leaders of today. You're the leaders now. You should make a difference now. And they hype everybody up. But there's an underlying expectation that in order to change the world, you have to be rich, famous, or powerful. And then young people graduate from high school and college and they enter the real world. And it turns out that it's blame difficult to become rich, famous, or powerful. And so that optimism fades to cynicism, and that cynicism fades to bitterness, and that bitterness fades to despair. And then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, this is just a game, and I'm just living for retirement. And and then we have all these kind of pathologies that show up in society. I'm not interested in that kind of aspiration to change the world. I'm interested in young people who are willing to change the world and understand there's a practical aspect to this that will take the rest of their life to carry out, and that there are seasons and chapters of life. And you have to go through each season successively, in succession, excuse me, in order to be able to really have change. Now, some of them may be blessed. They may have unusual opportunities. They may get rich, famous, or powerful, and perhaps earlier than some. But in my experience, Andy, when that happens, it generally comes at a cost that's not fun to pay. And so we teach our students, look, there are chapters to life. Your life is understood in many respects like a story. And there are chapters in life. And if you don't do the first chapters, the following chapters won't make sense. And so if you know that, then you're willing to put the time in. If I know that it's going to take me 10, 15 years to really master the skills and things that I need to trade for work that really makes a difference in the world, that's a really big difference than I went 5 years in, my life has not been awesome, and now I'm just done with the system and think the whole thing is a rigged game, and I check out. And so I'm looking for students who are willing to play a long game. And who know that a good preparation and an early start in that long game will make it shorter, but it's still a long game. There's a practical aspect here that is necessary because life is a process. You don't get to live all your life by the time you're 25. And if you do, you probably have messed something up.
Man, that is so critical that you can explain that to young adults, because you can say, hey, don't. It takes a long time. Don't worry. You're where you should be. But to explain that logically is critical. I've said for a long time that there's a lot of people know how to do something, but until you know why it works as it does, and you can explain it to somebody else, you don't really have that grasp of it. And so that really, I think what you said, that really helps. I mean, because we want these young adults to be professionals at whatever they do, not wannabes or not amateurs. And when I say professionals, I'm not necessarily talking about a professional athlete or I'm talking about just professionals at what they choose to do. And there's a definition of professional. I told my son this the other day. I just love this definition. The difference in an amateur and a professional: an amateur does it until he gets it right, and a professional does it until he can't get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And so to have that certainty and to be able to get on that track.
Well, there's another aspect to this that I find really disturbing, Andy, is that our culture's celebration of everything is great in youth, but not afterwards. If that's the case, then it's no wonder that our young people are absolutely on a tear to live everything and do everything before 25 or whatever, because it just goes downhill. Now, I don't know about you, Andy, but it appears to me that you're living at a sort of a high point in your life, in terms of what you've been able to do, and you're building on all that history and stuff like that. And in my life, I loved my 20s, and I wouldn't go back and do them for anything. I tell people I don't bounce as well physically as I used to, and that's about the only thing I miss. In terms of everything else, I'm so excited about my life now, and I'm so excited about what comes next. And I think that happens if we give young people a proper perspective and say, you should absolutely delight and enjoy with what you're doing now, and it gets better. Here's the analogy I use a lot. I say, if somebody wants to sail around the world, okay, then, and they have to sail around the world, they have to, save enough money to get sailing lessons and buy a boat. And they're working at Walmart stocking shelves. And nobody thinks that stocking shelves at Walmart is necessarily their full-time career forever, right? It makes every difference in the world if they know that every shift they work at Walmart is more money in the bank that they will then pay and save to buy the boat and sail around the world. And they're not surprised by how long it takes, but they see the progress, they see the progression. And what happens is often we get kids stocking shelves at Walmart and we forgot to tell them they're selling around the world. And after like the fourth or fifth time they do that, they're like, this just stinks. And they lose their aspirations, they lose their dreams because they've lost their context of where they are in life. And they don't understand the bigger story and say, hey, you're putting in time here where you're gaining skill and you're gaining experience that you will trade for bigger and better things. And it's a progression, but that progression is going to take a while. And so if you know that, first, it gives you hope and excitement to do what you're doing. Second, it gives you the desire to do that better, to really master where you are. And third, enjoy it. Like you'll be sailing around the world, almost dying in a storm later, and you'll be thinking about how nice it was to work at Walmart where the water wasn't coming over the bow. Like there's aspects of this that you should enjoy now that will help you then later. So
you're right, and I look at my life, and you're absolutely right. I am enjoying my best time, I guess, right now, and people sometimes say, "Wow, what was your big break?" And I'm like, break.
It's still coming.
Been a long, slow climb to the middle for me. And I just, I used to, when I was younger, I can understand looking at famous people and thinking, wow, what an incredible life. I actually remember driving down the road in maybe early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. And I heard a song on the radio that was from somebody, I didn't know him, but it was somebody from 20 years before. And I remember thinking, wow, that must be incredible to drive along and hear yourself on the radio and know that you did that. But I've got a different view of it now because, number one, I know some of those people who have done that music, and so I know a guy who had 5 number ones in a row, and then and that was before he was 30, and now every time I hear his music, it makes me kind of tense up because I think, wow, how weird would it be to think in my 20s that's the best it was ever going to be? Who wants that? I mean, you want that progression. So
you know what I feel bad for, Andy, and this is a strange thing to say, but there's a person that's in the news a lot, and every time I see him, I feel bad for him, and that's Tom Brady. And everybody's like, "Oh, Tom, yeah," but Brady built his whole concept of success, and I don't know, obviously, I have no connection to Tom Brady whatsoever, but his entire concept of success on something that is now not going to be achievable going forward. Now, maybe Brady's a much wiser person, and he sees this next part of his life as really exciting. But yeah, you see people like that who have this really early, fast success, and we say, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to be them?" I'm not so sure. Like you, I've met some of them on smaller stages, people that became CEOs of their company in their early 20s or something like that. And often there's a real cost that they paid for that leapfrogging, and they've had to really pay a big price for that. That's unseen. And I think occasionally that happens. I think sometimes that's God's blessing, and if that's you, you go with it. God gave it to you, steward it well. But if it's not you, then you're normal, and don't sneer at that. That actually can be a blessing that's beyond what you can see right now. So.
Right. And I don't know Tom Brady either, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And I look at I look at a lot of athletes who have ended their career, and I'm glad I see a difference with Peyton and Eli Manning. Mm-hmm. But that difference was made before they ever got into pro ball because of Archie and Olivia and Cooper, their brother. Archie asked me for books one time, and I told him, I said, I'll trade you. And he said, okay, what do you want to trade? I said, I want a football signed by the whole family. Cooper too. He said, Cooper too? I said, absolutely. I said, look, my boys, at that time, they were like 9 and 7. I said, my boys, they know Cooper, because my boys are probably not going to be NFL stars. And it's not about the football players you've raised. It's about the young men you've raised. And Cooper is, so I just, that that parenting, that pathway that we're on. I want to just shift here a little bit. I have heard you say that follow your passion is usually bad career advice. Explain that.
Yeah. So again, soapbox time. I sometimes when I speak out loud, I speak in live audiences. I say the people in the front row should move back a little bit. They might get spit on here as I get really wound up. Um, here's and look, there's well-meaning people out here that say this, and some people that know what they're talking about. And I'm not addressing this to you, but here's what I find frequently, both in my personal life, and I see this with my students, and I see this with my children. It just happened to some of my children actually yesterday, so it's kind of funny. You will have some well-meaning older person come and say, "Young man or daughter, young man or young woman, if you will follow your passion, you will never have to work another day in your life." And they say that. And if you dig a little, they're often miserable in their job, really hate their life, and think if I had just skateboarded more when I was younger, I would be so much happier now. I mean, there's this kind of disconnect, and it's well-meaning. I don't mean bad things in those people, but it doesn't really match up to reality. And so I used to work for a college, Andy. I was the director of admissions for many years, and then I worked with young people through my entire professional career. And as you talk to young people and say, "What do you want to do?" They want to rocket on stage. They want to be Red Bull sponsored and ride mountain bikes, or I can be in the middle of Iowa and I can ask somebody what they want to do. And they say, "I want to major in marine biology." And I'll say, "Really? Because you said you don't like math?" And they'll say, "Yes." And I'll say, "Why?" And they'll say, "Because I want to swim with dolphins." Well, who wouldn't want to get paid to swim with dolphins, right? I mean, like if I got paid to swim with dolphins, I may not be on the professional noticer right now. And so there's an aspect.
I had a guy tell me one time, that a young guy telling me that he's joining the Marines. I said, "You're joining the Marines?" I said, "Where is that coming from? That's kind of out of the blue, isn't it?" He said, "Yeah, I'm tired of living at home. I'm tired of people telling me what to do." Like, "Oh, so you're joining the Marines?
Have fun with that."
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, it's like, I don't like science, I don't like math, but I really like swimming with dolphins. Well, marine biology is going to be an interesting process for you. And so they have this, if you ask a person who's not been around the sun many times to do what they're passionate about, they're going to say their hobby. Now, some people make a living at their hobbies, but I don't know, maybe people like this too, Andy. I know a lot of outdoor folks, right? And they're the kayakers and climbers and all that kind of stuff. And I know people that, go that route. They're getting paid to ride mountain bikes. They're also breaking a lot of bones, living out of the back of a Subaru Outback, making almost no money, and constantly in search of a shower because you have to jump from festival to festival to things. I mean, like there's a work aspect there that, it can be fun. It's also not something you want to do for 20 years. And so there's always this kind of hidden, all jobs come with some amount of work, right? I love what I do. I still have to turn in expense reports, which I hate, but I have to do so. That's a requirement for my job. And so here's the flip side. When you get older, you start to meet people that you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So I met a person one time who was coaching my kids' basketball teams, and he ran a recycling company. Now, that's a fancy way to say that he was a private dump manager, okay? And this guy was wildly excited about his job. He was the most passionate person ever. And it's kind of like, how does one get passionate about driving garbage trucks? Well, he was really good at it. He was making solid money at it. And then if you're a guy, he had really big machines that smush stuff, which, I mean, that's cool. No matter how you look at it. I mean, like that's, you understand that, right?
Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that.
That's right. I mean, but he could look at a pile of trash and he knew how much was trash, how much was worth something. And he felt like he was making a difference, saving the planet. Now, inside there's a really interesting formula. People who have autonomy, they get to choose what they do and when they do it. And they do work that they think makes a difference. And that work pays the bills. Those people, almost without exception, love their work. And it doesn't matter what they do. And so then you kind of reverse engineer that and say, well, how does that happen? Well, it turns out you trade skill for autonomy. You don't get to do what you want to, pick your time and place and all that stuff unless you're good at what you do. And secondly, you have to trade experience for work that makes a difference. You have to go around the world a couple of times to figure out what you do and what the world needs and where those two things, Venn diagram overlap and say, oh, that's where I can make a difference. And then I tell students, okay, that process takes 10 to 15 years. That's the stocking Walmart part, right? Stocking shelves at Walmart. You don't graduate from college or graduate from high school and instantly fall into this. You have to build that skill and you have to gain that experience, and then you trade it for those things. Well, how do you do that? And we tell our students you have to have AOM, which is an attitude of mastery. And so go into whatever you're doing, wherever you are, and say, what do I want to master around here? And when you do that, you're focusing on doing things that you will then build skill and you will gain experience. And you're doing that in a conscious way. And if you go into any job knowing that even if I'm working at a fast food restaurant or I'm stocking shelves at Walmart, that I'm looking around for things that I can have an attitude of mastery about, then that means that every day you have this control and this ability to move the needle and gain experience and gain time gaining skill and experience, which you're going to trade for autonomy and work that makes a difference, which means you are now deliberately and consciously moving towards work that you love. And that, that's going to show up in different places. Andy, I went to school to be a veterinary surgeon because I read James Herriot, All Creatures Great and Small, which is a great,
I did too.
Absolutely, right?
And that's the same reason.
Yeah. And then I got a B in freshman biology, and I had a really kind of realization that I probably wasn't getting into vet school. I went to work for a job I didn't know existed when I went to college. I left that job to do work for a company that couldn't have existed when I graduated from college. I created every job that I had going forward in that company, and then I wound up owning that company. If you'd have told me when I was 25 that I would be the president and CEO of an education company, that not only would have been unbelievable to me, it would have sounded boring. But I will tell you that I've never had more fun in my entire life than what I'm doing right now. I am so excited about my work, but I did not jump into it right away. It was, in fact, I was maybe a late bloomer in this. It wasn't until my late 30s, early 40s that I started to get a little glimmer and go, oh. And then it was even a little bit after that till it went like, oh, this is great. But at that point, I had skill and experience, and now I have a lot of autonomy. I also get to be the chief wringable neck if things go wrong. It's my fault. But I also have a lot of it. I feel like I do work that makes a difference. So,
man, listen. I hate to stop this conversation.
No, that's fine.
So I'm going to ask. Can you do this again? Can we? Because I've got so many more questions. There's so much more I want to know. Can we record another episode?
So, Andy, you know this, right? If you get paid to speak, the big problem is not speaking; it's shutting up. So the answer is yes, absolutely. I'm delighted to. So.
Okay. Before we go, will you just give me an overview of the Navigate course?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a lot of things with Unbound, but one of the things we do is kind of an introduction, and it's included for all of our students in our programs. But we also sell it separately. And so Navigate is a course that's designed to teach students how to make great decisions. So look, I get really annoyed with these people that say, fill out this bubble chart and it'll teach you to be this. I filled out a bubble chart and it said I was supposed to be an audiologist. And to this day, I'm not really sure what an audiologist is or what they do. And so I'm not confident in those. Instead, I feel like what would be helpful is if you knew how to make good decisions. And there's a process and it's a learnable skill. And if you can do that, then you can make a good decision about whether or not you should go to college, what you should do in college, whether or not you should take this job, whether or not you should move, whether or not you should marry that person. All those things are big decisions, right? And making good decisions is a learnable skill. And so Navigate is a course that we've designed that teaches students how to gives them a framework to teach them how to make good and wise decisions. And if you're a student listening to this, or if you're a parent trying to pitch this to your student, it's fun. There's a story, there's a film that they watch as they go through it that kind of takes people on this journey. There's a framework that we teach, and it's highly interactive, and it should be a lot of fun, and it's not a heavy, tests and papers type of course. It should be one that should be a lot of fun and engaging for students who are in it. So,
man, thank you, Jonathan, and you guys, you just wait, because we're gonna have Jonathan again. And so, Jonathan, thank you so much for being with us. And I am fascinated by this. And again, I have many more questions, and thanks for answering the one so far.
Oh, it was a delight to be here and an absolute honor, Andy. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Till next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Big Chief writing tablets for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the fine folks at Hotel 7. Friends, when you travel, have you just about had it with the same old argument with your spouse about the choice between discount and luxury? Just do what King Solomon did and split that argument right down the middle. Allow the fine folks at Hotel 7 to provide the accommodations for your next vacation. Hotel 7 is that oh so gentle compromise for which you'd been hoping. At Hotel 7, we're not as austere as Motel 6 or as luxurious as Super 8. While we don't provide a full breakfast like Super 8, neither do we send you out the door with nothing like Motel 6. At Hotel 7, you'll find our famous boiled egg buffet and all the hot coffee you can drink. Both are available every single morning from 6 until 6:30. So what are you waiting for? Hit the road and check in soon. Oh, and by the way, because Hotel 7 is energy conscious, we won't leave the light on for you. There's a switch on the wall. It's right by the door. Hotel 7, when the middle is just what you're looking for.